Boom! We got my buddy
Live.
Juan Vargas here today. Super excited to have him. I remember the first time I met Juan, and we were actually in San Antonio, Texas, and we were doing a due diligence, and I was there and he was there, and we were just like digging into all like the details, and we were
hmm
just like, he was telling me a little bit more about his story, and I was super inspired by the things he was doing. And then like a month later, you called me and let me know about this property that was like a $17 million deal in Phoenix. And I was like, wow, Ron's really making this thing happen. So with that one, I want to bring you to my people. And what I mean by my people is my people that show up at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to talk real estate. So what's up, Juan? How you doing, brother?
Hey, it's a pleasure. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody that's joining us here. Appreciate everybody being here and just to talk shop, talk multifamily, commercial real estate, and I'm excited.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So if you don't mind just starting us off, like where are you from? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm based out of Texas, so the Lone Star State. Here in Houston. Born and raised here in the Houston area, and so yeah, this is home, and this is actually where we look for deals as well in
Cool.
Texas.
Cool. And then growing up, Juan, what was your family's thoughts on investing? Like, were they in real estate? Were they investors? Like, what was their thoughts on investing?
That's a great question, and I think it has a lot to do with my path and progress, right? Because growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur, in his own right, and my mom as well. She had a restaurant. My dad had his own little shop, where he would, he was a welder, right? So he would build trailers, all these different things, and that's what we did as little kids. He taught us to work hard with our hands and really learn, that those traits, right? But at the same time, he also invested in real estate, right? So, he had his own, single family homes. And even today, he still does. He has his own, commercial real estate. And, so I learned, from him, regarding real estate. But the one thing that I picked up as I became an adult was that, I actually didn't want to do this. I actually didn't want to do real estate. And it was because, I saw him doing everything, right? And so he was the guy that, from start to finish, he was the one that did it all, right? And so once I decided to actually get into real estate, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do real estate, but I'm gonna do it the right way, right? And that's leveraging other people. That's scaling and trying to do it that way, right? So that's what I learned, right? But yeah, they certainly did have an impact in real estate, for me.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So you got like you saw your parents going out there and creating wealth in the world in life, right? And then you like modeled that, but then at the same time you took a little tweak and you tweaked it so that you would have more of a team, right? And do it with other people that were also inspired, right?
Exactly, right. And it's the relationships, is the human capital is what we call it, right? It's leveraging other people's strengths, and together we can go far, right? And my dad, it wasn't wrong, right? I mean, he had his own strategy, right? And a lot of people do things their own way, right? And individually, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But in this business, what I found, especially starting out, right, it's always best to leverage and to have a team, right? And it doesn't have to be the same team every time, but you got to have a team, right? And surround yourself with solid people that together you can go further.
Yeah. Yeah. It taught you what was possible, man. It was taught you that there's more out there,
Exactly. Yeah.
there's a lot of like little like beliefs that people have to break if they don't have parents who are entrepreneurial, and that don't go out there and put the work, put the work and create the result, because at the end of the day, you got to create the result to keep staying at the game.
Yeah. And one thing, for me, they're immigrants. My parents are from Mexico. And so, one thing for me as I grew up as well was, I didn't want to be comfortable, if you will, right? Because I was born here, right? So, sometimes, at least for me, I'm not speaking on everybody, out there as Americans, but sometimes as an American, you tend to get comfortable and you tend to think that, hey, things are going to happen for me automatically because I'm born here. I'm already a step ahead. I know English, and I'm able to get further just because I'm born here, right? And go to college and all these different things. But what I also found out was, that immigrant mentality, right? It's about working hard and trying to get ahead, because that, in your country or where you came from, it's tough, right? So, a lot of the entrepreneurs, today that you see out there are actually, immigrants, right? And so, so for me, I was at the point where I was a little comfortable. I was working at W-2, and then I was like, a wake up call. I was like, yeah, I can't continue to do this. Right? I had to, have a challenge, right? So, that's when I decided to get into real estate. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was your W-2 job?
Yeah, I worked for BMW. I was actually on the technical side.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, I did that for many years, and it was a good job, right? And I enjoyed it, but like most jobs, they have a ceiling, and I was at that ceiling, kept hitting over my head, so, so, just, I had to make a change, at that point,
So that's awesome, man. So you were saying that your dad was in real estate. Was he more on the single family side, or did he get into some apartment building type things, or?
So he didn't get into apartments. He was mostly single family, right? And he still owns some today here, and then as well as back home in his country. But he also has commercial real estate, so like a little shop, and gas station, that type of thing. But so that's what he has. Yeah.
Cool. So how did you get into, I know you got into real estate from like a single family side from your dad, but then how did you transition into, some of the bigger deals that you're doing now?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So, I had a goal in mind, and that was, to get to, a certain amount of monthly cash flow. Right. And then what I realized is that, it was going to take me, 60 or 70, 80 houses to get to that number. Right. And, it's like most of us, right, in single family, right, and it's scalable once you get to a certain point, right? But I just felt that, doing the traditional way, or even doing a refi and going through all these processes and just to get to that number, was something forever. So, the best thing that ever happened to me on the single family side was I had a resident that, was a really good tenant, and then he ended up leaving. He ended up leaving because he was in the Army. He got stationed somewhere else. He ended up leaving, and then, I put it on the market, and I had a hard time leasing that single family home. But what I realized at that point was that relying on one person, relying on one tenant is a mistake. And for me, it was a mistake, right? Because that resident leaves, you're 100% vacant, right? And so I right then and there, I realized that I needed to get into multifamily. You need more doors, right? And so, I did the same process as I did, in the single family side, and I used that, which was writing letters and calling owners. And, there's an owner that called me back. She was ready to sell, and I was ready to buy. So we made it happen, right? So that was my first multifamily property, and didn't look back to single family from there.
That's awesome. So what was that first deal that you bought? What size was it? Where was it located? And what was the purchase price?
Yeah. So the purchase price was $1 million. It was a 32 unit. So it was like 31 and change, a door. This is back in 2016, and did direct mail. I actually reached out to brokers. They didn't really, take me as seriously. So then I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to, take matters in my own hand and reach out to brokers directly. So it was a 32 unit. It was a little outside of Houston, another county outside of Houston. And so, yeah, made it happen.
Cool. And you live in Houston, right?
I live in Houston. Yes.
Got it. Cool. So you got the 32 unit. And did you hire third-party property management, or did you property manage it yourself? Like what did your team look like when you bought that deal?
Yeah, so whenever I first acquired that property, I actually used a friend who's a general contractor on the single family side, and we worked on it together. So he was my partner. He was actually the one that did, all the renovations, the upgrades, and so it was a good partnership. I kind of pieced the deal together, and I oversaw operations and that type of thing. But and so that's what we did. We made it happen together, and then we had to piece it together from a standpoint of getting the debt together. I went through 11, 12 different banks to try to get financing, because of the purchase price was $1 million and the loan amount was less than $1 million. You had a hard time finding banks that would want to lend on that. But luckily, eventually, I ended up getting a bank that would finance it, and we made it happen.
Awesome. That's awesome. And we got a question coming in from my friend Jen, and she said, "How did you reach out to brokers to pitch how you structure your first deal, and how did you structure your first deal?"
Yeah, so I reached out to brokers. Is sort of like the way I was doing it in single family, right? And so the first thing a broker in multifamily wants to know is your experience, right? Your track record, right? Because they want to make sure that you're able to close. And so I would reach out to them and give them my experience, which wasn't in multifamily, it was in single family. And then they were like, okay, that's great, but what about multifamily? And I would tell them, no, I don't have anything in multifamily yet, but look what I've done in single family. And it was okay, but they didn't really take me as seriously, right? So they did send me some deals, but they were deals that were really junk deals, right? Something that people had already seen all over the place, and maybe deals that were on LoopNet, and that type of thing. So it was a little bit of a struggle. How I structured the deal was, because I had, put in the sweat equity and putting the deal together and, sourced it and, the debt, just pretty much, the majority of the deal. My partner brought in equity and so did I. But, we structured it to a way that where I had a little bit more equity than he did because, I did the majority of frankly, did the majority of the work right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Appreciate that. Yeah, and that first deal, right? That first deal, that was kind of your taste, right? That was your taste of like what the multifamily type properties are going to produce. Like, you said with your single family, you lost one tenant, you were 100% vacant. Well, now you have a 32 unit. Even if 3 tenants are gone, you're still 90% occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a big mindset, right? Certainly, going from one single family home or one resident to a 30 plus unit, there's a little bit of mindset shift that you have to take, right? But to me, it was simple, right? There's income, how much is making, right? And then there's expenses, and then you take the debt, right? You take the debt service, and then whatever's left over, if there's left over, net cash flow, that's a good return for your investment, then it just makes sense, right? And it made a lot of sense to me. It helped that I got it at a lower price per door. Even in those days, right, in 2016, deals were trading, in the 50s already, right, 60s. So that helped for sure. But the numbers make sense. So it's like it just if the numbers make sense, you got to pull the trigger, right? So that's the thing about multifamily or anything, any kind of business. I know a little bit more about you, Oliver, because we also have mastermind calls that we do. Actually, we were on a call yesterday, right? But you know how to look at the financials on a business and know if it's going to make money or not, right? Or how you can improve the operations of that business, right, and take it to the next level, right? And same thing with this, right? Under market rents, the rents. The units are still classic. It's being self-managed by the owners that they actually built the property, right? And they're tired, they're ready to retire, and it's just a perfect recipe, right, to be successful, right? So yeah, that was it.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. And I just want to, you said 50s and 60s. So like we're up here in DC. So like when you say 50s and 60s, people are probably like, what is he talking about? Can you dig deeper a little bit into that?
Well, that, to be clear, that was back in 2016, right? But now you're not seeing that anywhere. And if you do, then it's junk, right? So
specifically, what do you mean by that? Is like 50,000,
no,
60,000?
50,000 a door, right? That's what I was saying. 50 to 60,000 a door, right? So we got it for 31. But yeah, you're not going to find that right now. And if you do, it's going to be way out there in the middle of nowhere where it's like 200 people living in a town, right? And it's not really worth it, right? In my opinion.
Right. But even so though, like, that's why a lot of like people in the Northeast, right? Like the New Yorks and the Washington DCs and the Bostons and they're going down to the Texas markets because people are looking at the price points where we currently are at. And they're like, oh my God, you can get all of that in Texas for even if it's not 50,000 or 60,000 now per unit, right? You can buy it for 80, 90, 100, 110 per unit. It's still significantly reduced in comparison to what we would pay for that here in DC or New York or Boston,
That's correct, right? That's correct. And so there's a lot of truth to that, but one thing that, I would bring up, and we would bring it up all the time whenever we have our calls, right, on a bi-weekly basis. But, what kills Texas and the properties here is the insurance and the taxes. And you hear it all the time. You heard it yesterday, but it's true, right? Because year over year, you're going to have a significant jump. And so you have to protest, right? You have to go there and hire an attorney and the protest. Otherwise, they're going to get you, right? And so it's not uncommon for the taxes to jump up, right? Because Texas is no state income tax, right? But they get you with the property taxes, right? And so one way or another, you're going to pay your taxes, right? So that's the thing about Texas, right? So you just got to make sure that you account and you underwrite properly, right, to account for that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that one. And then two, like we're in areas where property taxes are even higher than they are in Texas. So like we're looking at you guys down there like, like I can't wait to pay those prices. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
wow,
even though yours are growing, they're still lower than what they would be up here.
That's crazy to think about, right? And so not only are your prices much higher, but then your taxes, and so it really is hard to make any money like that, right? But that's also where we're talking about other kind of markets, right? We're talking about like Phoenix, right? Phoenix is a great market. The deal that you mentioned at the very beginning, whenever you introduced me, was the $17 million deal that's in Phoenix, right? But that deal is a deal that we bought at $70 a door, right? And now a year and a half later, 2 years later, right? Things are trading at $135, $140 a door, right? So but the thing about Phoenix or Arizona specifically is that you don't have those significant tax increases, right? So you have like a cap, 5%, max, year over year, and the insurance is dirt cheap, right, compared to Texas. So, you just got to make sure that you're looking at the right markets that fit your investment criteria.
Got it. So let's actually walk through that. So was the Phoenix deal your next big acquisition in multifamily, or?
No, I mean there's a few in between.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can talk about this Phoenix deal if you like. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's walk through.
Yeah.
That.
So it's a deal that we bought at 16.7 actually, right? I mean, I believe Arizona is a disclosure state, but like Texas, we're non-disclosure. But yeah, 16.7. So it's like 70 a door, 236 unit. It is a syndication. We raised equity for the deal. We have some partners in it. But yeah, this deal was under contract previously, right? And the previous buyer, for whatever reason, they didn't decide to proceed with the deal. Either that or they just couldn't close on it. We're not sure, but it came back to us off market, right? And I looked at it, and it was a little rough, right? From both a resident perspective and also a sub-market perspective, right? But after I did a little bit more research, I realized that this property was probably the worst in that submarket, right? So it brought down the submarket, right? So whenever you thought about the submarket being kind of rough, it was because of this property, right? So it was like both good and bad that I was taking this property on, right? Because it's good from a perspective of, hey, if I clean it up, then it improves the submarket. But it's also bad because, hey, I'm buying the property, right, that nobody wants to be at, right? So a lot of the residents were month to month. It had a lot of housing units, a lot of deferred maintenance. The owner had owned the property for 14, 15 years. They were once the largest owner in Phoenix, and so it was a lot of we had some plumbing issues. There was a lot of things like that, right? So it was a master meter property, but nonetheless, we took it on, and fast forward to today, we have drastically improved the property and drastically improved the NOI and operations and our resident profile, but it took a lot of hard work to get to that point, right? So I guess we'll go a little bit deeper. Debt. We did make the mistake of going agency on this deal. I realized later that it's better to
walk us through what agency means, please.
Yeah, agency is there's Fannie and Freddie, and they're government-backed agencies that tend to give you the best terms, right? It's a little bit harder to qualify for those guys, but once you're in, then assuming that deal qualifies for them as well, which is 90% and above, stabilized deal, and it's got to be in a decent market as well where they want to finance it, but that's agency. You can get Fannie or Freddie or even HUD, right? And so we did Freddie on this We got a 10-year note, and we got 5 years of IO, and it looked all great and dandy then. But once you go to exit, right, because the prices have soared, right, within the last couple of years, and so we can take advantage of the market right now, but then we have to pay a hefty fine or fee, right, if you will, on the back end, right? And so that's where you get into trouble with the agencies, right? They make you pay their interest, the lender, right? They make you pay their interest one way or another, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you hit a lot of things there. Let's kind of unpack that a little bit. So you
Yeah,
said so agency is Fannie, Freddie, or HUD, right? So the agency
right.
loans, right? And then you were saying like 90%, right? So that's 90% occupied. Like
Mm-hmm.
Fannie, Freddie, or HUD are not going to give you a loan on a property that's 75, 60, or 80% occupied. It has to be 90% or above occupied, right? And then IO, interest only. That means you're only paying the interest on the loan that you get. You don't have to pay the principal, which is paying down the loan balance, right? You're distributing that out to your investors basically. Have you how long has it been since you've owned that deal? It's been
We actually, yeah, no, we closed on that deal in September, no, August of 2019.
cool.
August of 2019, and man, you won't believe, because that market's on fire, right? Brokers are calling like all the time to see, hey, are you ready to sell? Because like the life cycle for a deal in Phoenix is like 2 years, right? And so because the cap rate compression and the rent growth, and it just keeps going and it keeps soaring. So people are like, hey, I don't have to wait 5 years or 6 years to get our returns. We can get out of this deal in 18 to 24 months and make the returns plus some, right?
Yep.
So it's just that kind of market.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So let's walk through that. So what are some of the things that you did at that property that like really like helped transform the property from like a construction standpoint, operation standpoint? Value?
Yeah, so for sure. So we, from a operations, well, I guess I'll start with the construction side, right? Construction, definitely, if you want to improve the resident base, then you have to give them something of value, right? And that usually is by having better management or improving the property physically, right? So that's the first thing we did, they have problem with the chiller, which is the AC. The chiller is basically a big master metered AC unit, right? And then what it does is it cools water, and it has like lines, and then it goes to every unit. The downside to that is, like, if that unit goes down, the entire property doesn't have AC, right? And so they were having issues with that, and so we went ahead and we replaced it, right? We budgeted for it and we replaced it. We put a brand new $300,000 chiller, right? And so now we didn't have like that many issues with the AC. We still had some issues individually, with the air handlers now. So we had to go in there and clean those or replace them as necessary. We took care of that, right? So that was already an improvement for residents, right? You're living in Phoenix, man. It's like 200 degrees, weather, right? So it's like you gotta have AC there, right? And so fixing that was a big improvement already. So then from there, we also were able to improve the office, right? The office area, give them a better appearance. We did exterior paint, landscaping, any deferred maintenance that they had. We improved and renovated the laundry facility. There's 2 laundry facilities, and they were junk, man. Like, you walk in there, the machines weren't working. It just like looked dark in there, and it's like just didn't work, right? So went in there and replaced the flooring, painting, new machines, all these different things, and that's already improvement. Pool area, barbecue, grills and pergola, all these different things, right? And those are all amenities, improvements, for the residents. And then at the same time, as the leases are expiring, you're bringing in new, better qualified residents, right? And so it took us a couple of rent rolls to actually get to a better tenant profile. And I guess what I mean by that is, you have your rent roll, which is, say there's 236 units, right? And so that means there's 236 residents, right? Assuming that you're 100% occupied. So that's your rent roll, right? But we had to go through that a couple of times, right? Because we had to go through like stages of residents to get to the better quality residents, right? Because it's not going to happen overnight, right? So we had to go through that a couple of times to get to the better quality residents that would be able to pay on time, or pay on time much better than the previous ones were, and actually want or be okay with paying a higher rent as well, right? So it's all part of the business plan though,
What improvements did you do to the interior? I mean, obviously that's pretty crazy that you did all the stuff to the outside, the amenities, the office, the chiller. And we do a lot of mechanical work, so like that's awesome that you went in there and changed that chiller, because you can imagine how pissed off somebody would be when it's 130 degrees in Arizona and you don't have AC,
Oh yeah, for sure. No, you're right. And for the chillers, I mean, for the interior renovations, what we did was they were all classic, and a lot of these units didn't have good cabinets either, right? So we had to go like to the studs on most of these units, right? And so what I mean by that is like, knocking down the sheetrock, and replacing the cabinets, installing new appliances, new flooring, all these different things, even plumbing, right? So some of the plumbing behind the tub was actually leaking, and it was all rusted up, right? And so, we even did that, right? So, and then the finished product was, having, nice, vinyl plank flooring, brand new cabinets, shaker cabinet doors, new appliances, stainless steel, all these different things, and ceiling fans, just a nice quality, unit. And so we started doing that to a lot of the units, and we got it was like $100. Like right away we got it, and then we bumped it another $25. We got it, so we got 125. Then we bumped it up another 25. So then we got 150, and then we bumped it up another 25. Then we got 175, and so now we're at around 200. And then unfortunately, I guess, and fortunately, I'll say in hindsight now, we also had a fire at the property. So we went through deaths at the property. We went through fires. We went through all kinds of challenges. But we had a fire at the property on one of the buildings, right? And it was actually arson, because we had just installed security cameras, and then we saw the guy actually setting fire to the building, and then so the building got on fire, but it was more on the third floor. There's 3 levels, but these are all like block construction buildings, so the structure didn't like burn down. It was just more like the roof area and like the sheetrock, and then the firefighters went out there to water it down to put out the fire. Then all the water went down, so it caused like mold in the second floor. So it's like, like issues that you have to deal with, once you realize those kind of things, right?
Oh my God. I got to stop you there. So you saying somebody came so somebody came in there and literally burnt up one of your units?
Yeah, he did. He went in there, and you can see him. He's walking around with like something like lit up, and then we're like, man, this guy's up to no good, right? And then he's walking around, and then he looks back, and he's like, trying to, and it was like at 3 o'clock in the morning, mind you, right? It's like, what is this guy walking around at 3 o'clock in the morning for, right? But he has something lit up in his hand, and then you can see him go like this, like to the top, and you're like, what did he do there? And then he just walks away, right? And then 15, 20 minutes later, you start seeing like a little bit of like spark, and then like 30 minutes later, you start seeing some smoke, and then it's like, before you know it, it's on fire, right? But I guess my whole point in mentioning that fire building was that, we went through that process with the insurance, and, we ended up, finally got approval this week for the permits, right? You know how being in construction, it can take a while, and it took us several months to get the permits, and we finally got them this week or this past week. And then, and so what we're going to do with that unit or that building is we're going to renovate those to a higher level, further. So we're going to do coarse countertops. We're going to do backsplash, and just have a higher premium for those units. And so we're getting, $150, $200 on these other ones that we're doing that we call a partial now, right? And then, these other ones are going to be premium. So, we should be in pretty good shape, and we'll be able to prove out the model, and hopefully we can exit at a good price point,
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So you were talking about a lot of construction. What was your guys' construction budget?
I have to look back at the numbers. I think it was like 1.3, 1.4.
Yeah.
Something like that. And yeah, it took, we still have, a chunk remaining, but yeah, it's taken, everything and more, right? So the thing that I found out about, Phoenix or Arizona in particular, these are things that you find out later, right? And sometimes, you get to learn, right? But what I found out was that the labor costs, and labor costs are much higher there than Texas. So we were budgeting higher, but not quite as high as we should have, right? So labor costs are higher. Materials costs are higher as well. So, it's one of those things that where, you're thinking that you're going to renovate so many units, and you end up renovating less. But the upside, or the flip side of that, is that we're thinking that we're going to get this much in rent bump, and we're actually getting much higher than that. So there's pros and cons there, right? And so, yeah, at the end, it's working out in our favor,
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's always like a happy medium with that, you know what I mean? Because you always think you're going to be able to go in there and do all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the prices come back, and then there's, things are, you're as you start to open up the walls, you start to see that you have more work to do than you previously thought you were going to have to do. But it's just committing first. You committed, you guys bought the deal, and then you figured the rest out. And you had a business plan, and you executed on the business plan, but there's always going to be some sort of like adjustment, to that as you go along to make it all work. And you guys are making it work. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Certainly, it's certainly, there are some challenges, with the property, but, at the end of the day, it's how you perform it and what you give back to your investors, right? And that's what matters at the end of the day. We have it's a 5-year goal, 5-year plan, and and the goal is to be able to exit this one, in the 2-year mark. And I'm sure our investors will be, just excited once we're able to give them some good returns, in the back end.
I can only, if you're telling me, I'm just doing the math in my head, and you're saying you bought it at 70, and then you're already getting price, the broker's opinion of values at 140. Your investors are going to be very happy.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. So it should be good either way. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got some questions coming in. What impact has COVID had on your current assets and your plans to acquire future assets? Yeah,
that's another great question. It certainly had an impact. It certainly did have an impact. There's one property that we bought in February of 2020 here in Houston, and we bought it and we walked right into COVID, right? So we haven't owned that property in a non-COVID environment, right? So, it's performing, but the challenge with it has been that, collections at times, right? Collections, and delinquency, those type of things, right? Because, if residents are affected, then it's going to affect the ownership group, and that's everybody, passive investors included, right? And so there certainly has been a challenge, on some of our properties more than others. But I guess the second part of the question was, how will that impact, moving forward with future deals? We just closed on another one just a couple weeks ago. We actually closed another one a couple weeks ago here in Houston as well, and this is during COVID as well, right? We just underwrote to a point where year one, our underwriting is actually negative, and the reason why it's negative is because our income is actually flat, but our taxes, here we go with the taxes again. Our taxes actually, we underwrote to where they increase in year one, and so therefore our NOI actually decreases, right? So that's the way we underwrote it, and our numbers still worked, and then there's a bump in year 2 and year 3. So to answer your question, we're underwriting to where we're more flat in year 1, and now moving forward, we're in April now. So moving forward, how will we underwrite, for any future deals? We will have maybe a little bit of a rent growth because, I think that the rent growth towards the latter part of the year is going to start picking up, right? Maybe not 2 or 3%, but I'm thinking it's going to be 0.5% or 1%, and then go from there, from 2022. That's just, where all the statistics are pointing as well, right? As we start to get more vaccinations and people are starting to get more comfortable getting back to work, I'm thinking that, things will pick up steam pretty soon.
That's great, man. Yeah. No, and so like you guys are just you're gonna keep buying deals, but you're just gonna make sure your underwriting reflects the potential hiccups that are happening in the market. And if the numbers don't work, the numbers don't work. You don't buy it. But if the numbers do work, then you keep moving forward and keep executing on your game plan.
You're exactly right. And I think it's very important that, anytime you're looking at a deal that, you stick with the numbers and the numbers are really, so the numbers can be off by a little bit, right? Because you're projecting wrong, or it could be higher or it could be lower, right? But you still got to stick with the numbers and not get emotional on a deal, right? Because it's so easy to get emotional on a deal because you want to add it and you're already envisioning this or envisioning that. It's 100% important to stick with the with the numbers and don't go outside of that.
Yeah, that was a great question, Sia. Then James also had a question. How are you determining your construction cost?
Yeah, so the construction cost is based off of other deals, right? So if we're looking at a new deal, then we're looking at our past deals to see how much it actually cost us, right? Not how much we budgeted at the beginning, but how much it actually cost, right? What are the things costing us, right? From both an interior renovation standpoint and also exterior. So that's really the best way. But another way is to actually take a general contractor with you on a property tour or due diligence, and they can give you like an estimate right then and there, right? And then you can further improve your budget, right? And so they'll give you up-to-date information on materials costs and labor costs and all these different things. So I think combination of both.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that one. It's in the beginning, like when you're underwriting deals, you're not going to have it all dialed in. So a bathroom, changing out flooring, painting the unit, that's going to be maybe $3,000, right? And then that's that $3,000 to $5,000. You'll use that budget in your underwriting, right? And then once you actually get the deal under contract, you start to dial in that budget, right? You bring a contractor with you, and they're going to say, all right, well, it's going to be $2,955. Great. Now you have an actual tight budget, right? To actually push back on somebody to go and execute on that work, right? So I totally agree with you on that. You start with like a rough budget and then you dial it in.
And to add to that, always have a contingency as well, right? Because if you're doing round numbers, you said 2955, right? So say you budget 3,000, right? But what if it's the other way, right? What if it's like 3155, right? So you always have to have a contingency no matter what. In every single situation, have a contingency, because more times than not, you will use it up and you'll be glad that you had it. At least for
more
us,
times than not, it's like always,
always. Yeah. So, especially nowadays where construction costs are just continuing to increase, you'll use it up for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I love that. And then Jen asks, what is the normal age of the properties you usually aim for? And then what class?
Yeah, so we have bought, B and C properties. So 70s and 80s have been, where we have bought the majority of the properties. But now we're really trying to shift to the B plus and above. That's not to say that I won't look at a C plus deal, right? Or like say a B minus, but I'm trying to shift to a better quality asset. Like for example, the last one that we acquired was a 95, right? Mid 90s. Just trying to shift to like, higher 80s, 90s, 2000s. Because, the reality is, you take a 70s, deal versus a 90s deal, the plumbing, right? So the plumbing, the electrical, the things you cannot see, those things are 40, 50 years old now, right? And so it's you can renovate both properties and you can really improve them and they look nice, but the reality is that the insides are still the same, right? They're still the same age. Nobody's gonna go in there and spend millions of dollars just to replace the plumbing, right? Nobody's gonna do that because you're not gonna get a return on that. So that's a challenge with it. So you're buying a 70s deal and it's like, oh wow, look at this. I can get it for this versus this other one that's $10,000 more a door. Yeah, but it comes with this, right? You're getting the plumbing that's been there for 50 years, and the electrical that's aluminum or it could be pigtailed or combination of all these different things, and parking lot issues and all these different things, right? So it's just important to really understand those kind of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And those are all the hidden costs that that get nobody really understands until you actually own the asset and you start getting the phone calls. Hey, my toilet's clogged, and those are all the things that operators like you and I deal with.
And so like and the reason why I know this is because I've been there, man. Like going back to the Phoenix property, that's a 70s deal, a 71, right? It's a chiller property. It's a flat roofs. It had the plumbing issues. We had plumbing issues after plumbing issues, right? And so it's just one of those things that you learn, right? Yes, the profit at the end is going to be, it should be good, but still, it's the headache that you're dealing with in the meanwhile, right? And then instead of you cash flowing better, you're cash flowing less, right? Because you have to spend the would have been cash flowed into capex items that are not really driving any kind of return, you know?
Yeah. It's less predictable. Less
It's
predictable.
less predictable. Exactly.
Yeah. That's great, man. Um, Totally agree with that. So you're saying so that the Arizona property you're in the process of selling that property. Can you walk us through what that looks like and how and the process that you're going through with that?
Yeah. So right now we're not gonna sell it just yet, but right now what we're trying to do is get it ready for a potential sale towards the end of the year, right? And so what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Well, number one is getting that fire building back online, right? I mentioned that we just got the permits for that, so getting that fire building back online, getting those units ready, getting those units leased, and then really improve the NOI from there, and then cleaning up the expenses, right? So there's a lot of things that we've had over the T12, which is the trailing 12 financials, um, monthly financials. There's a lot of things that we want to clean up, right? Such as utilities, right? We're constantly bringing down utility costs, and at the same time, we're billing back utilities, which it wasn't being billed before. And so we introduced that like about 6 months ago. And so now the utility costs are going down because we replaced a lot of the supply lines on the plumbing side. So a lot of the leaks that were there, that were present, are actually no longer there, right? So naturally your utility costs are going to go down, but at the same time we're billing back. So then we're trying to get to where our utilities are actually zero. It's costing us nothing, right? So that's going to be a big improvement over the next, call it 6 to 9 months, right? And then, from there also we're reducing our payroll, right? Which is the maintenance, because there's a lot of different maintenance that we had at the properties. We actually had more maintenance members at the property and taking care of this or that. And so we've actually reduced it now, and which is better. Another one is security, right? We had a security guy going out to the property on a weekly basis. And because we've improved the tenant profile, he doesn't have to be there as much anymore, right? So now we're going from $3,500 to $4,000 a month when we're paying this guy to like $1,500 a month, right? And multiply that times 12, right? It's a big difference, right? In the expense side, right? So it's a combination of many different things that we're doing to really improve the operations. We're constantly improving the units, so the revenue is going up, right? We introduced Wi-Fi, right? So the revenue is going up as well. So it's a lot of other income sources that we're doing. Covered parking is another one, and so reducing expenses, increasing income, and that's what the idea of the whole project, right?
That's great. So when you said the word bill back, so that means like your property went from all utilities included to now you're just renting out the apartment, and then the utilities would be in the tenant's name,
Exactly.
or actually not. You would send them a separate bill, right?
Exactly. So we went from all utilities included at the property to us billing back a flat fee. So we're doing, I can't remember the exact number. Say it was $50, right? I think it's like 40 and 60. 40 for like the smaller bedrooms, and then 60 for like the larger bedrooms. So average of $50, right? And that's how much we're billing back, like a flat fee, right? So if you're using more, then no matter what, you're only getting billed $50, right? But then since then, we're introducing an actual RUBS program, right? So now it's actually going to be more beneficial for the property. It's going to cost the residents more. They're going to be paying more. It's going to be more beneficial for the property because it's going to be a percentage of what the property is costing. So depending on whether you're a larger or a smaller bedroom, you're going to get a percentage of bill back, right? So it's going to be more of an upside for the property, as I said. Yeah. So we took it from a flat fee to a actual RUBS, and we'll get it to as close to zero as possible, right? So would be maybe like around 85 to 90 bill back.
Got it. That's awesome, man. So I wanted to also ask you, where are you headed next? You just talked about this deal in Arizona. Mm-hmm. You also talked about the new property you bought in Houston. What's your plans next?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'm at the point where I've done a bunch of JVs, right? With a bunch of, and I'll continue to do that, right? But really, it's more about building, trying to go a little bit more vertical with the company, and really building better systems, I've been, talking to somebody that we may be, working together, and I think we'd be able to make a really good partnership and really, be able to scale it. But as far as a deal front, I would say that the idea and the goal was to acquire one a quarter for 2021. We acquired one in Q1, and now we have to get three more, right, towards towards the end of the year. If we don't get there, if we get to one or two, then that's still a win for us. But yeah, for this year, and just continue it, right? And I think that multifamily will continue to be a great asset class. It's a necessity, right? We need food, water, oxygen, we need sleep, and we need shelter, right? And it's been like that since day one, and it's not going to change. That's why I really like this asset class. Just really trying to improve on a better quality assets that we're buying, because that even if you're buying at a lower cap, it also indicates lower risk, and it also indicates that somebody on the back end is going to want to buy this property, right? It's going to retain its value. So in most cases, right? So that's a little bit about the goals, right?
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. Totally agree with you. There's a lot less like day-to-day minutia that you get wrapped up in with these these older properties, when you in transitioning from older properties to newer properties, you can start to reap more of the benefits of having the cash flow, and they're more predictable. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But at the same time, it's you got to cut your teeth on something. So it was good that you started. You got moving forward, and nothing. There's always it's always a good time when you can get in there and really understand how the asset would operate, because now you have it from both perspectives. You have it from like, oh wow, this is the matter with this is the matter with that, and then you also now you have the perspective of, wow, this is what a really smooth property operates like. So now you have like two frames of reference, and a reference that you can actually go toward, and continue to grow with.
That's a good point. And yes, will they cash flow the same? Probably not, right? Because a nicer quality, lower cap deal is going to have a lower return, right? But you also have a lower risk, right? And it's a nicer, newer property that you should have lower maintenance costs and et cetera, right? So on the other side, right, you're going to have a Class C property where you can buy it at a higher cap, at a lower price per door, but then you're going to have all these issues, right? Then yes, you should have more cash flow, but then if you're using the cash flow on deferred maintenance and all these improvements that you need to make because you didn't account for them, then there goes that, right? So it's a little bit of a balance, but you're right. Sometimes you have to cut your teeth on a couple of deals, and say, okay, I've been there, done that. I'll either continue to do that because I actually love the challenge. I like these kind of properties, or hey, I'm done with this. I want to move to a nicer quality asset type, and so I'm probably at that point where I want to move to a nicer quality asset type. Just because you have a little bit more of a pride as well, right, in the nicer quality assets as well, right? So, but yeah, everything comes with a risk reward swing, right? So it just you just got to look at what's the best situation for you at the time.
Totally agree. So we had a couple more questions come in. So Sia was asking, how have your partnerships evolved through your time into multifamily? And then how do you determine if someone is good to do a joint venture with, or is the GP or a GP with them on a deal?
Yeah. So the how have they evolved? I mean, I think I'm always looking to build relationships with others out there, right? And I think that every single person out there can bring something of value, right? And so sometimes it's timing, right? So say you and Oliver, you and I were say next month we're looking at a deal, right? And then we're trying to get a deal, but then nothing happens, whatever, right? And then say 3 months from now, you have a deal, but then it's not perfect timing for me because I'm already working on a deal, right? So sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes it's about what people can bring to the table, the skill sets, the personalities, their geographical location. There's a lot of different reasons why you would want to partner. And for me, I'm always looking to build relationships with others out there. And I never say no. I just look into how we can help each other and try to figure it out from there. And if it works out, then great. And if it doesn't, then, we'll see if we can do something in the future. Right. But I think everybody can bring something of value.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And then like even to add to that a little bit, it's like you want to definitely be in partnership with people that are headed in the same trajectory and same vision. It's like you don't want to be with someone who wants to buy a duplex and then you're buying, 200 units. Like there's always going to be conflict.
100%. 100%. Yeah. People have to be aligned, right? You have to be aligned. And then here's the other thing, right? Like if you really want to do a long-term partnership, right? It kind of goes back to your point, right? Maybe that, your partner that you started working with, maybe you got 1 or 2 deals. Maybe he's okay with just doing 2 or 3 deals because he has a certain goal, and that goal is to get the certain, monthly cash flow, maybe, right? And then, spend the rest of his time in traveling the world, right? Maybe that's his goal. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But maybe your goal is not to do that. Maybe your goal is you're just driven like crazy, and you want to scale this thing into like to see how far you can get, right? And so there's going to be a little bit of a misalignment there of goals and the interest, right? One's not going to give so much effort anymore because he's content, and the other one is still going to continue to push. And so there's going to be a little bit of a separation at that point once you get there, right? So you have to make sure that the goals, the ideas, the personalities, so many different things. It's like a marriage, man. It really is. But you guys have to be like this, right? And head the right direction. And 1 + 1 has got to equal 3. I say this, quite a few times, but if 1 + 1 = 2, then it's not enough. It's got to be 3.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, it really works out that way. Like there's that story where you have the Clydesdales, right? And you got one Clydesdale can pull 7,000 pounds by itself, and then the other Clydesdale, you think like you'd add them two together, and then they can pull 14,000 pounds. But in reality, what they can pull is like 20,000 pounds. And I didn't create that, and you didn't create that, but it's just like the universe created that. And it's because of the synergies you get when you have 2 committed people that are headed in the right direction. They just bring this third mind, or this third energy, this third persona that like helps you get to where you want to get to faster. And the vision becomes even bigger, right?
Exactly. And the same thing can be said, like, I mean, we're talking about 1 + 1, right? Or like 2 people, right? But what if you have 3 or 4 people in a partnership, right? Well, same concept, right? It can't 3 people, it can't be 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3, right? It's got to be 4 or 5, right? And so you have to accelerate each other and really push each other, motivate each other, and hold each other accountable, right? And that's the whole idea of behind partnerships. And there's so many different things that I would advise people out there that are listening to, if you're at the point where you're looking to have a partnership or create a new partnership, don't force anything. Really, study each other and maybe partner, maybe do a JV on a couple of deals before you actually, maybe create one entity, right, or something like that, right? But really get to know each other more before you put the ring on, man, because it gets crazy from there, right? So. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's an important piece. You got to tread carefully, but it's also one of the most rewarding things that you can do if you got the right people, man. You get so much further. So it's you got both sides of it,
Yeah, no, I love that one and totally agree with you on it. We had another question come in from Jen, and honestly, I really appreciate your time and you come sharing out with your experiences with us.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure.
It's so inspiring. It really is to see someone who's committed, that's going after their goals. And like, those are people that I love aligning with. I love our masterminds together. I love hearing what you're working on. I love being around people because it just gives me that energy. It makes me feel good. You know what I mean? And I'm really a big person. I'm like, I want to be around people that make me feel good and make me want to continue to take the actions that are going to bring the prosperity for myself, my family, my community, So I really do appreciate you. And this question kind of aligns with that.
Thank you.
Too, from Jen. She said, what would be your advice to someone with no multifamily experience? They're trying to land their first deal. What are the things that person should be doing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it's a question that people eventually have to go through if you want to get to the space, right? What I would do is write down what you can bring to the table. Write down what you're good at, what you like doing, what you enjoy doing, your skill sets, right? Because as I said earlier, everybody can bring something to the table, right? If you have a job, then obviously maybe being out there talking to brokers or meeting with brokers or touring properties is that it maybe not be your fit, right? But you may have a network at your job where you can raise capital, right? Raise equity, or maybe your job just so happens to be, with the bank. Maybe you have the connections. Maybe you can bring that piece, or maybe you're great at underwriting. Maybe you could bring that piece, to the table. There, or maybe you have the net worth or liquidity, right? That is required to take down a deal, right? And you can provide that or offer that, right? There's so many different things that you can bring to the table. Everybody that's listening on this call has something that you can bring to the table. You just have to look deep, dig deep, and understand what it is, and then and then that's your strength, right? Focus on that, right? And everybody else can bring the rest of it, right? So if you want to get into a deal or a set of deals, the best thing I would do is to do what I said right there, but also find other people that can bring the remaining pieces, and it really is going to be a team effort, right? Most of these deals, they're done on a team effort, right? There's hardly any deals where it's like one guy, he does it all, right? Even that one guy has an attorney, he's got lenders, he's got all kinds of different people around him, right? General contractors, right? Property managers, but everybody has a team that to be able to do these deals. So what I would say is find people around you that you can partner with, that you can work with, offer them something of value, before you're looking for something that they can bring to you as a value, right? I'll always be the person that's offering before you receive, and you'll see that things will work out in your favor, and then the team's favor, at the end. But write down what your strengths are, and as I said, everybody has something that you can bring to the table. Just dig deep down, and if it's not your strength, then put it to the side. Don't try to force something,
Yeah, totally agree with you on that one. I'll second that 100,000 times. It's like, don't go it alone. Like, continue to get around people that are going where you want to go. Continue to show up. You're showing up here. Just continue to be around people that are moving in that direction, and then partner with some people. Like, that's going to keep you moving forward. It's like, imagine trying to get from Washington, D.C. to California on a unicycle. Like, it's going to be a pain. Like, you're the only person, the only energy coming, bringing it, getting from here to California. But if you're in a car and you got four wheels and you got four people's energy, I mean, even if you need to take a vacation, there's still three people that are pulling the car forward. So it's like, don't go it alone. Continue to find partners, continue to show up, continue to be committed to your goal and your vision and your dream. And continue to be around the people that are going where you want to go,
Yeah, exactly. And just to add real quick, we're talking about teams, right? So say Oliver, I know you've been involved in some deals as well, right? So, say somebody here, I think was it Jen, say Jen, is looking for something that she can bring a value, right? And hey, let me bring that value to Oliver, right? So now when Jen is talking to a broker, right? She's talking to Bob, the broker, and then she tells him, hey, we have experience, we have this, right? Now it's like, it really is we, because it's Oliver experience that you're leveraging, right? But it is we, right? It wasn't you individually, but now it's we. And that's really the power, right? Of this whole thing, right? It's collectively, we have this. And so now a lender sees it, and now the broker sees it, and the seller sees it. They're like, okay, these guys are serious. Let's proceed, right? So that's the other part of it, right? That you got to look at.
Yeah. People buy certainty, man, and certainty comes with we. You don't always have to have all the experience yourself. I remember when I first started my construction company, it wasn't just me; it was we. It was like I brought the energy, the whatever it takes, the passion, the drive, and my partner brought the experience, and we found the deals together, and then we executed together. I love the we thing, man, and it's in the moment you stop becoming just a singular person. And honestly, when you're just singular, it's selfish because you're just thinking about yourself. But when you can open and expand that vision so it becomes we, everything changes. Everything changes.
Yeah. And here's the other thing of that, right? Like, and this is not my example, but I saw this or I heard it somewhere, but in the single family side, right? And I say this because I was in the single family side. I was focused on 100% of a grape, right? But why focus on 100% of a grape when you can get a slice of a watermelon, right? And so a slice of a watermelon is much bigger than that 100% of that grape, right? And so that's the same concept in multifamily, right? It's a much bigger piece, and yes, you're having to divide it with so many people, but it's a much bigger piece than that 100% of that grape, right? So just an easier way to kind of think about it as well, right?
Man, I love that one. And it's like we're both sitting under the sunset, right? And just because I have sun doesn't mean you can't have sun, and because you have sun doesn't mean I can't have sun. So with that, man, I love it, man, and I keep shining bright, man, because you're so inspiring to me. I love being around you. I love hearing what you're doing. I love just everything about you and where you're going. And then D is saying me plus we equals success. So everybody appreciated you today, man. We really do appreciate you showing up. I know you got you two boys, and I hope you enjoy your rest of your Saturday. It's always good drinking coffee and talking real estate, talking shop.
Hey, coffee and real estate, man. There's nothing like it. Hey, no, I just want to say, thank you for your time. Oliver, thank you for allowing me to be a guest here as well. And thank you to everyone that's, both on this call and out there, on, live, listening, and hopefully, somebody out there, got some value out of it. And thank you for everybody for listening, and appreciate it.
Hopefully I got value. So I'm raising my hand, but yeah, no, everybody got value. Brian saying, thanks for sharing your knowledge, Juan. Appreciate it a ton. Exclamation point. Alexis, thanks, Juan. Very informative. Love the energy and passion as well. Sia says, thank you with the value, Juan and Oliver. Janice, thank you. And Juan, everyone enjoyed the great questions answered. So D was like, thanks for sharing the great information. So you crushed it, man. I really do appreciate you.
It makes my job easier whenever we have people that are asking great questions. So that's really where it's at, right? So thanks to everybody. Yeah, appreciate it.
There we go again. It's we take over. So go out there and be great.
Hey, you too. Everybody, you too. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click subscribe down below and give me a thumbs up. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at Oliver Fernandez 3. I have new videos just like this one dropping every week. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you want to hear next. Until then, keep growing and keep learning. Just do it.